Faithful viewers of this channel will recall a disastrous visit my wife and I paid to Buckingham Palace last summer. However, there is one redeeming feature to Buckingham Palace that I want to highlight today. I'm not talking about the exit. The place I'm referring to is the Royal Mews, where the King's ceremonial horses and coaches are kept, a working stables beside the palace. The staff here are really excellent and friendly. The mews built at Buckingham Palace suggest the latest incarnation of royal mews that have existed at earlier palaces for hundreds of years. Opened in 1825, it has been in continuous use ever since, and as well as royal horses and coaches, royal cars are also kept here ready for use by the King and his family. Some 30 horses are kept at the mews, depending on the time of year, together with state cars, and the royal coachmen, grooms, chauffeurs and other staff can live on site in flats above the carriage houses and stable blocks. Some carriages are still in daily use, while others are only seen on special state occasions. Here are some of the collection's highlights. The semi-state landau date from the reign of Queen Victoria, the Royal Mews housing several of these very practical vehicles. This type of coach, pulled by 2 pairs of horses, are often used for official or ceremonial duties. For example, newly appointed High Commissioners for Commonwealth countries travel in a semi-state landau when they present their credentials to the King at the palace. Queen Alexandra's state coach is one of the oldest in the mews, built in 1865 and converted in 1893 for the then Princess of Wales, later Queen Alexandra, the Danish consort of King Edward VII. She used this carriage regularly until her death in 1925. Since 1962, the coach has been used to carry the imperial state crown, the sword of state and the cap of maintenance during the procession accompanying the state opening of Parliament. At this time, it has a mounted escort from the household cavalry and is saluted as if it is carrying a member of the royal family. The Irish state coach was purchased by Queen Victoria and her husband Prince Albert in 1853, after it caught their attention at the Great Industrial Exhibition in Dublin. Queen Victoria used this coach often, in preference to the huge gold state coach. More on that later. On the top of the coach is a gold frieze added in 1876 when Victoria was proclaimed Empress of India, including a palm of Indian amongst a rose of England, a thistle of Scotland and a shamrock of Ireland. Sadly, in 1911, during restoration work, a fire destroyed most of the wooden body of this coach. It was rebuilt in a record 19 weeks and took part in the coronation procession of King George V. The glass coach famously carried Lady Elizabeth Bowes Lyon to Westminster Abbey for her 1923 marriage to the Duke of York, later King George VI. Queen Elizabeth II, then Princess Elizabeth, also used this coach to travel to her wedding ceremony to Prince Philip of Greece and Denmark. It is called the glass coach due to glass being used in all the top panels and was originally acquired for the 1911 coronation of King George V. It is now used to carry royal brides to their weddings. The coach weighs 1 ton, and during the state opening of Parliament it carries the ladies in waiting and the master of the horse, the ceremonial head of the Royal Mews. The Scottish state coach was built in 1830 and was purchased by Queen Mary, the consort of King George V, in 1930, so it was already 100 years old when it entered royal service. It became the Scottish state coach in 1968, with the Order of the Thistle insignia added to the side panels, this Order of Chivalry being the preeminent order in Scotland today. The Queen used this coach whilst visiting Scotland for official occasions, and it also figured in London processions, famously in 2016 for the Queen's 90th birthday celebrations at Windsor Castle. The Australian state coach is one of the most recent coaches added to the Royal Mews, built between 1986 and 88, presented to the Queen in Canberra, Australia in 1988. A gift from the Australian people and partly funded by the Australian government, it is entirely built from Australian materials. The Queen often used it during the state opening of Parliament, and it carried the King and Queen Camilla, then of course known as the Prince of Wales and the Duchess of Cornwall, along with Catherine Middleton's parents, from Westminster Abbey to Buckingham Palace following the wedding of Prince William and Catherine Middleton in 2011. A throwback to an earlier type of daily use carriage is King Edward VII's town coach. Before the popularisation of the car, the Royal Mews had several of these plainer coaches, but all were disposed of in World War II except this one. Placed in storage, it was restored in 1964 and given glass windows. At the state opening of Parliament, it carries the ceremonial maces. The newest coach is the Diamond Jubilee State Coach, again made in Australia, and eventually arriving in Britain in 2014. It was most recently seen carrying the King and Queen to their coronation at Westminster Abbey in 2023. It weighs 2 3/4 tons and has electric windows, heating, hydraulic stabilizers and air conditioning. The crown atop the roof is carved from timber from Lord Nelson's flagship HMS Victory, and timber segments from many royal buildings and vehicles are incorporated in the coach, including the Tower of London, Henry VIII's flagship, the Mary Rose, Balmoral Castle, St Paul's Cathedral, Windsor Castle, and the Stone of Scone, used in coronations. And even material from the Franklin expedition to the Canadian Arctic given by Canada, a Battle of Britain Spitfire and a Dambusters Lancaster bomber, and even part of a musket ball from the Battle of Waterloo. The door handles were made in New Zealand and contained 24 diamonds and 130 sapphires, while the lamps were made in Edinburgh. Perhaps the most famous coach is the biggest, the Gold State Coach, that was last seen at the coronation of the King in 2023. It was commissioned by King George III in 1760 and delivered in 1762. Drawn by 8 horses, it has a wooden frame covered in gold leaf with a velvet and silk interior, and it weighs an astonishing 4 tons. It has been used in the coronation of every British monarch from William IV to Charles III. Notoriously uncomfortable and possessed of a tendency to roll like a ship in high seas, Queen Elizabeth II famously described it as horrible and not very comfortable, and she didn't use it for her Diamond Jubilee journey at the age of 86. My personal favourite is this rather ordinary donkey barouche, which was used by Queen Victoria when she was old, using it on holiday in the south of France and at Osborne House, her home on the Isle of Wight. I like donkeys a lot, and so I like the idea of a donkey pulling a queen. It was restored in 1962 and was used by the Queen at Windsor Castle, sometimes to give rides to her children, pulled by a Shetland pony. Since 1843, a brougham like this is still used daily to carry the mail between Buckingham Palace and St James's Palace, which I think is a very nice tradition indeed. It is a very useful vehicle, a brougham being smaller than the other coaches and able to turn very sharply. So I commend to you the Royal Mews, well worth a visit if you're ever in London. And if you'd like to see more of the cars of the royal family, the Queen's former collection of royal vehicles is on display at Sandringham in Norfolk, and is also well worth a visit. And if you can't get there, I've made a video about that as well, link in the end screen. Many thanks for watching, please subscribe and share, and also visit my audiobook channel, War Stories with Mark Felton. You can also help to support both of my channels at PayPal and Patreon, details in the description box below.